Dash, you're right on a TV. Good morning, everybody. So we're live. This is the online classroom, Think Indigenous, grade 4, and we're going to be getting ready here to teach a lesson to all the grade 4s, including my son, who's sitting here, and that's his hand there waving. But we're going to get going. And the lesson that we're going to do today is storytelling. And, you know, this is an important one. It is the connector for so many Indigenous content and so many ways of knowing. And this is one of the original ways of education for a whole bunch of Indigenous people across this country. Taika Waititi from New Zealand, you know, he mentioned that storytelling, that Indigenous people are original storytellers. So this is how we're going to be teaching English language arts, but it's cross-curricular. It goes into a whole bunch of different subject areas. It goes into a whole bunch of different knowledge systems, and it predates any curriculum that was ever invented that is online. However, we are going to meet the objectives and some of the indicators with our Saskatchewan curriculum, and making sure that we understand what that means to for the English language arts, social studies, and so on. So while we start and while we do this lesson, and what we're going to be talking about is I'm going to be sharing a story. But not only I'm going to share a story, I'm also going to share some oral tradition and kind of what that means and what it looks like, and what that means from the Cree lens, because that's the story that I'm going to share with all of you. And particularly, I'm going to be sharing the Swampy Cree lens of Indigenous knowledge with everybody through a story by my grandfather. Now, just a little background history for all of the students. This story is actually originating in the Kinneseo-Sipi area in northern Manitoba, in Norway House, Manitoba, and that story is one that, you know, my grandfather had acquired as a young boy, and was passed down to him by his father, and then their grandfather, and so on and so forth. So it goes back thousands of years, and these were our original education ways of knowing. And I'm going to share how our grade 4 students right now, how they can actually do this and actually continue on some of this Indigenous knowledge and storytelling from wherever we are and from wherever your local community is. So whenever we tell stories, it's important to recognize where the knowledge comes from. So, and how we do that is whenever we're telling something, to make sure that it's true and make sure that it's real, what we say for all of us, and, you know, I'm telling all of the students that are watching, is that we need to know where this story comes from. So the story that I'm going to share with all of you is it's a history story about summer and winter, and that was shared with me by my Nimosho, my grandfather. And my grandfather wanted to promote this so much to so many people that he not only told it through oral tradition, but he also wrote this story down as in a format in a book, and, you know, published it, and, you know, circulated that throughout North America and throughout Canada for sure, and definitely 100% throughout Manitoba. And I'm excited to share it. So, you know, and one of the things that I want the students to do and to know that are listening into this is that we are all storytellers. All of us have an ability to tell story. All of us have an ability to share story. And it's so valuable, and it's an amazing teaching tool. And the students that are participating in this lesson, we do have homework. You know, I mean, I wish this was just a fun activity, but everybody here does have a little piece that they have to do to showcase that this lesson continues on, and that we meet some objectives and some indicators. Because I know a lot of students and a lot of parents, you know, including my partner, was a little bit worried about the school closures and what we're going to do. But guess what? Learning never ends. You know, this is an Indigenous way of knowing and understanding. Learning never ends. It continues on. And we do this in any kind of way, shape, or form. And this is our lesson here for March 17th. And I'm wearing green. I'm not Irish, but it's just kind of like support my friends that are Irish and support some of that. So I'm gonna do that today. And then here we go. So the first thing to know about story, and this is the most important thing, is that people need to be interested in story. So if you tell a story, you can't be just sitting there and going, once upon a time there was a man and he was a happy man and he was glad that he was there. Nobody is excited about that. So you have to actually be excited when you're going to tell a story. You have to actually share a knowledge system and understanding that helps people be engaged. So the number one thing when telling story is that to make sure the audience is engaged. That's number one. Also, you need to make sure that you know the story. Okay, you can't tell a story and then all of a sudden you're getting to the really good part and then you're just like, wait a minute, how does that go again? Because what happens is all the story just gets crushed and it goes down and then nobody can tell it anymore. So we have to know our story, okay? The next part is that you have to make sure that there's a lesson that's a part of the story. So make sure that there's something that's important that you want to tell that's involved with this story. For example, if we're wanting to teach somebody about sharing, about being kind, we would tell a story maybe of somebody being mean and how that felt to that person and how they changed their lives and how they changed the way they do things to make people feel included. And that would teach us a story about how that is. The story I'm going to share here is actually a whole bunch of that. So those of you that don't know, they're not printing the story anymore, but a lot of libraries still have it. And, this is a story here that's really important for all of us. So here it is. This is called Murdo Story. It's a legend from northern Manitoba. And as you can see right in the middle here, and the man that's in the middle, that's my mushum. That's my grandfather. His name was Murdo Scribe. And this story, he makes sure to say that, this story is one that comes from our territory in northern Manitoba on the Cree side of who I am. And this part here shares that with all of these animals and what this is. So, just as a kind of like a summary, to share exactly what you're going to be talking about is what's this story about? So as we look at books or as we hear stories and storytelling, one of the things that's really important is that we look at and we identify, what do you think this story is about? So I'm going to ask all of you. I'm also going to ask my son here, Camden. He knows the story, so it's a little bit kind of cheating. But what do you think, just by looking at this cover, just by looking at this book right now, what do you think this story is going to be about?
Animals, maybe, and people.
So animals and people as we see them on there. What kind of animal? There's a whole bunch of animals on there. There's lots on there. Also, where do you think this takes place?
Manitoba.
In Manitoba. You can see in the north with all the trees that are in the background there in the illustrator. So there's two parts to storytelling from when we do books. The storytelling, there's the words that tell the story, but there's also the pictures that tell the story. Now, a long time ago, when we didn't have books like this, what would we have to use for pictures? What do you think we'd have to use for pictures?
What?
Our imagination in our mind and how we talk, right? So I want you just to close your eyes, or just close your eye right now, okay? Now, everybody else can just participate in this. And I want you to just imagine in your mind this story and paint this picture that's in your mind right now and what it looks like from your perspective, okay? So imagine a place that would never had summer, that the snow was on the ground 100% of the time, every day, all year long. The snow never left. It was cold all the time. The rivers were frozen. The trees had a bunch of snow on them. and it never got warm. Now, can you picture that in your mind? Can you see that in your mind? Awesome. Now, I want you to put that picture just off to the side, and I want you to think of a new picture in your mind. The new picture that I want you to think about in your mind is a picture of a beautiful summer place that winter never goes, that it's summer all the time, that there's no snow, the grass is green, the rivers are flowing, and the sun is shining, and it's this beautiful kind of warm place. Now, both these pictures, I want you to put them in your mind. I want you to put them side by side with one another. And they're side by side in your mind. And I want you to think about which of those two places would be harder to live. What do you think?
Winter.
The winter one. Why would it be harder to live in the winter?
You won't be able to get food, or they won't be able to water because it's raining.
Yeah, so it's harder to get food, harder to get water. It's more difficult in the winter time. So now I want you to continue to think about these two worlds. Now that you can tell that, it would be harder in the winter time, it would be harder on the animals. Now, a long time ago, before the world is what it is right now, we had a world that existed only one winter world, and we had one summer world. And both of these worlds existed. In the summer world, they had their own animals that existed on this side. In the winter world, they had their own animals that existed on this side. And exactly what you said, the winter animals knew it was hard. They wanted to actually know, they wanted to get a piece of that beautiful summer. And what happened was the winter animals got together and they said, this is so hard for us to live in this type of world. We want a little piece of that summer. How do we get it? So what they did is they found an animal that knew about summer, that would go back and forth in both of these worlds. So that animal was muskrat. So muskrat, they invited them into their place, the winter animals. And when they invited muskrat in, they told muskrat they gave him a whole bunch of food, the best food that they had. They filled him up. Oh, it was just so full, man. It was just massively full. He was just so happy. He loved all the compliments. They were like, oh, your fur's so beautiful, muskrat. Oh, you're such a good swimmer, muskrat. Wow, look at your tail. It's so deadly, muskrat. So they were saying all these really good things. Muskrat was just really feeling cool, He was just like, oh man, I like this. After a whole day of treating him really well, all the winter animals asked him a question. They said, we want to know about summer. We want to know about the secret bag of summer that exists and where we can find that. Muskrat sat back and he looked at them and he said, well, guess what? I'm going to help you guys. The secret bag of summer exists on an island. And in this island, there's a wigwam. And inside this wigwam, the secret bag of summer is on the wall. It's protected by sandhill crane, and it's protected by frog. And outside of that wigwam is all the summer animals. They're all protecting it. And if anybody comes, they yell and they scream, and then they take that secret bag of summer and they take off. In the water, all the summer animals patrol that in their canoes, and it's all around there. So it's impossible to get in there, Muskrat told them. It's impossible for them to get into that space. And they thought, okay, thank you. And then Muskrat went on his way and he traveled the way back to his home. All the winter animals sat down in a big circle and they said, we got to have a plan and we got to figure out how we're going to actually change this so that we can create, so we can steal the secret bag of summer. So they thought of different plans. They thought of different things that they can do. And they said, okay, we have a plan. Let's do this. So the first part of what they did is they needed to find out, they needed intel. You know what intel is? Intel is kind of like you need information, okay, so that they can know for sure what that is. So intel means information. intelligence is short for. So we just try to find out what information they had. So who can get to that thing without being noticed? There was so many different animals that when they start flying, you can just hear them right away. So every animal, as soon as they took their wings, they start flying, you can hear them. And they're like, no, you're cut. You can't do it because you're too loud. All of a sudden, one animal was flying and they couldn't even hear one single thing from him. And that was Owl. And they said, that's him. That's the one. He's the guy that's going to help us. So they called Owl and they said, Owl, we need you to spy on the wigwam and the secret bag of summer. So Owl got together and he flew secretly, silently. And as he flew, he found that wigwam on the island and he found where it was. And there was a tiny little hole that existed on the wigwam, and he stuck his beak in there. And his beak was sticking in that hole, and he was watching. Sure enough, he seen that secret bag of summer hanging on the wall. And he's like, there it is. And Sandhill Crane and Frog, they were the protectors. They were really good and really understanding of how to do this. So they looked at this secret bag of, Owl was looking at the secret bag of summer. Sandhill Crane went, wait a minute. I feel like someone's watching me. You ever notice that sometimes you can feel people watching you? Like you just, all of a sudden you feel it. That's how Sandhill Crane felt. And all of a sudden he looked up and he said, I think there's something there that's looking at me. And Frog's like, nobody can come here. It's impossible for people to try and come and see us. So he said, I'm pretty sure it's up there. So Sandhill Crane stuck a stick in the fire till it was burning red hot and smoking. He took that stick up and he poked the beak of Owl. And Owl was in so much pain, but he toughed it out. He didn't scream, he didn't freak out, he didn't cry, he didn't do anything. And that poke was right on his nose and he just stayed there. And Sandhill Crane held it for a bit, he put it back and he said, well, Frog, I guess you're right. I guess you're right. This isn't, there's nobody there watching. So they continued on, and Frog was making glue, making some glue with with the frog glue, and they were doing this work together in this wigwam like they always do. Then Owl took off, and he flew back across into the winterland, and he told them all the things that were there, all the things that were around, everything that was part of it. And when he was in there, telling all the winter animals, they came up with a plan. So what they first did is they went and asked Beaver to secretly make his way over to all the canoes. And Beaver, with his sharp teeth and what he does when he likes eating wood, he made all of the canoe oars. You know what oars are? The oars that paddle the boat, that's what they're called. He made them real tiny so that they would possibly break. And then he swam back. Then they asked for one of the most powerful swimmers of all the animals in the north. And guess which one was one of them? Guess which animal is a really powerful swimmer?
Moose.
A moose is a really powerful swimmer, but also caribou. So they asked Caribou if he could swim across. So Caribou starts swimming across in the water. He's going in the water like this. And man, he's powerful. He's so good. Caribou's going across like this, and he's going into the water. And all of a sudden, all the summer animals, they set out the alarm. Doot, 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 doot. And they're like, there's animals coming to steal the secret bag of summer. They jumped in all their canoes, and they start going, and they paddle about 4 paddles, and they're in the middle of the river, and all of a sudden their oars break, and their canoes start floating. And there's nothing they can do. So then Caribou starts swimming again faster and faster, and he gets to the island. He runs into the wigwam. He looks at Sandhill Crane, and he stuffs Sandhill Crane's face right into the sand. He throws glue, a frog against the wigwam, and he puts a whole bunch of glue on him, and he grabs that bag of summer, and then he takes it in his mouth, and he swims back into the winterland. And they're swimming back and forth, and he finally makes it to the shore, and he gives it to all these animals that are super fast. By this time, all the summer animals are following them. And it's a big chase. It's like the most exciting car chase in the history, but it's all animals. And they're all chasing this secret bag, and it goes to Fox. And then it goes to, finally, the last one it goes to is Fisher. So Fisher jumps up in the trees, and he starts going in the trees. They can't find him. All of a sudden, they look up, and the trees are rustling like this. He's jumping from tree to tree, and he's getting tired. So all the summer animals said, I want you to, the best hunter to come forward. The best hunter comes with an arrow, and he takes a shot, and he misses. Oh, he missed him just barely. But Fisher was getting so tired now. It was getting so bad. So what happened is that the next time he went, the best hunter pulled back as hard as he can go, as powerful as he can go, and he took the bead right on Fisher, and he let go, and he shot him right in the body. That arrow was so powerful that it shot Fisher right into the night sky, all the way up into the sky, and he turned into these beautiful stars. So the beautiful stars in which they changed into, and they call it in Cree Kiwetinachak, is the northern star. So in this northern star, Fisher is there to always guide hunters whenever they're lost. But he ended up being in there, and he ended up turning into also the Big Dipper. So this Big Dipper that we look is actually Fisher that got shot into the sky by those hunters. Now the secret bag of summer was now there for all the people, and they were arguing about what they were going to do. We need to decide right now. We need to work together. We need to work alongside one another so that we don't fight anymore. And we can't live in this winterland forever because it's so hard for us. So they decided that what they were going to do is that they were going to divide winter and summer up between each other. So how are they going to do that? Moose came forward and said, put his hoof down on the ground, and he said, I want there to be as many winters and as many summers as there are hooves on my hair on my hooves. And they looked, and there was thousands of hairs on Moose's hoof. And they're like, that's too much. That's too long of a winter, and that's too long of a summer. So then Beaver came across, and Beaver slapped his tail down. And Beaver's tail was like, I want there to be as many summer and months as there are scales on my tail. And they looked, and there was hundreds of scales on the tail. And they're like, no, that's too much. Now Frog was in the back. Remember, Frog let the bag of summer just disappear. So they were kind of mad at him. They didn't want him to. Do anything. They didn't want to hear him or anything. And he's like, hey, I have an idea. He had his arms up like this, and he had his toes up, and he was jumping like this. And all of a sudden they said, hey, you just never mind. And they slapped him. And Frog went flying into the trees and landed. And they said, oh, we shouldn't be mean to Frog. Maybe he had something to say about how we wanted to divide these up. So they went over, and they seen Frog, and Frog was laying there. And he was all stretched out. He was laying there on his back like this. And while he was laying there, he had his fingers up on all of his hands. Three, and three. He had three fingers on one hand, three on the other, three toes. And they said, wow, that's how we should divide up our year. That's how we should share these things. So they shared them. They decided that that's what they were going to do. So in that breakdown, all of the summer months, the three summer months, the three spring, fall, winter, was all broken down according to Frog. And that is how we continue. That's how the animals decided to share summer and winter. That's how we do that. Now, that's the end of that. That's the end of that story. Now, if we go through this, it talks about all these different things and how I shared with you. Okay, as you go through all the stories, as you can see, and as you can look at the different pictures that are listed on there, and you can see all the different things. But this right here is how we learn a lot of stories now. But what I shared with you is how we shared stories a long time ago. So what I'm going to ask for homework, I guess, for everybody else, is I want you to take your favorite book, Okay, I want you to think of a book, a story book, probably about like something about like this. It doesn't have to be very long. I want you to get a book like this, and what I want you to do is I want you to read it. Okay, I want you to see, I want you to hear that book. I want you to know what it is. Read it. It's your favorite. Why is it your favorite? You think about those things, and I want you to put the book down. Once you've studied it, once you know it, I want you to put that book down, and I want you to retell it. But through oral tradition, you can't use the book at all. You have to do it like how I showed you. And you can rewatch this video. We'll be saving it, but you can rewatch it, and I want you to retell it. You retell it to your parents. You retell it to your kukum or whoever is in your home, your little sister or your cousins or whoever is there. I want you to retell that story. I want you to be excited about the different things that you're telling. Remember, people got to be interested in it. Okay, that's how our education system was a long time ago. So parents, that are at home right now, you definitely 100% can help out. The classroom is open to everybody. So what I want you to do is I want you also to model some of this, okay? If you expect your children to do it and you don't want to do it, maybe they won't help out. So we got to actually, our parents, model some of that as well. Help our kids feel comfortable about sharing oral tradition and story. And guess what? How we just shared this lesson right now, it met so many outcomes and indicators within the K-12 grade 4 curriculum. It's crazy. Like there's nothing that it just hit so many. Like the animals that we talked about, the glue that frog made, the animals and the swimming of the caribou. All of the flying owl, or the owls flying silently, like all of these things meet so many outcomes and indicators that this lesson goes so much further than just one subject area. The box that's created around westernized education system is blown up when we use Indigenous knowledge. And parents, you and grandparents, whoever it is, share these stories with your kids. And that's the lesson for today's grade 4 online class. And Camden, was that good?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, cheers. Have a good day, everyone.
Hey, Carson.